Welcome back to another episode of the Renewable Energy Movement podcast. Today I'm speaking with Tom Moon, who's the Head of Business Development for Europe at Solarport. He's had a really interesting career, starting out as a self-proclaimed ski bum in Canada before falling into solar event space and building a brand for himself along with growing a very impressive sales team. Now he's moved into the world of mounting structures, single-handedly building the presence of UK company Solarport in Europe. We get into what you can learn about the industry by running 50,000 square metre of exhibitions, why LinkedIn is an underrated business development tool, especially for new markets, why personal connection still beats a perfect CV when building a successful team, and what companies should be considering when trying to build utility-scale solar projects at speed. Let's get into it. Welcome to another episode of the Renewable Energy Movement podcast, powered by Kigyo. Today we've got Tom Moon with us. Easier name to pronounce than some others, so I can't get that one wrong. Tom, I'll allow you to give yourself a bit of an introduction. I think it might be better than what I give.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. My name's Tom Moon, and I am the Head of Business Development for the UK and Europe for Solarport, who is a mounting manufacturer. So we supply systems for solar farms on commercial and utility scale, and we help the build-out process. We do all the engineering and all the design work in order to facilitate your project and help you a long way to build out renewable energy.
Ah, great, good stuff. And I think we'll get onto Solarport in a bit more detail a bit later, but just starting from the beginning, how did you get into the renewable energy industry?
Kind of fell into it, to be honest. I was living and working in Canada, skiing and snowboarding, being a bit of a ski bum, if you like, and then left the country, came back to Europe, stayed with my parents for a couple of months looking for a job in London, and then it just so happened I was at the dinner table with a family friend who ran a business in the event space. And had multiple industries under that company, but one of them where a job was available was in renewables, specifically in solar. So I found myself on a plane and then living in London pretty quickly, within a week of that conversation actually. Learning the ropes of the business, doing a bit of subscription work and a bit of advertising roles and helping with the internal sort of bits of it that needed doing. And kind of just learned the industry a bit through that.
Yeah.
Did a few calls here and there to help with clients' needs and so on. And then a manager heard me on the phone and said, why don't you start trying to sell it? So I started selling conferences and exhibitions and platforms for networking, essentially. Learned a lot about it, learned a lot about myself and how to approach things and how to speak to people, how to understand value propositions and how to sort of understand what a client needs versus what they want, and what's the best outcome for them and what are they looking for, which has been something that's really helped me along in my own personal life as well.
Yeah.
You don't ask, you don't get. So
Indeed.
yeah, that's how I got into it.
And what made you stay in the sector once you kind of fell into it?
Well, not really knowing I was going to fall into renewable energy, I never had like an inkling to go into it. I knew of it, but it was quite new, I suppose. Well, it's not that new, but 10 years ago was still it's still an upcoming industry as it is today. It's still very new in comparison to, say, fossil fuel industry. I kind of liked the people in it, the passion, the drive, and the nice sort of doing good and being sustainable about it. It just gives you sort of a bit more of a heartwarming feeling rather than doing a mundane day-to-day sort of job. There's an outcome which is the best sort of future for us as a society and a planet, so why not?
Yeah, resonates with me completely. I've recruited in a number of areas, and this is by far my favourite for exactly that reason. Yeah, it's nice to have a purpose to aim towards at the end of it. Exactly.
People tend to be happy as well. They tend to be really engaging and passionate about it. So when they speak about it, they're not just wheeling off, sales spiel here and there. They actually have a sort of meaning behind what they want to do. Yeah. So that's a nice part of the industry. I really enjoy that part.
Indeed. So that you entered the industry, but firstly you work for Solar Media Limited, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. That's where I started doing the event side.
And can you give us an idea on the types of events that you'd be involved with?
Yeah, of course. So originally they had finance and investment forums for solar, which turned into corporate energy forums, clean energy forums, and then they started on the storage side of things. So storage is obviously one of the biggest parts of renewable energy at the moment. We can generate so electricity from solar all day, and at night even wind can take that over, etc. But the storage element is becoming really, really, really important. Even standalone storage by itself, without having solar or wind connected to it, is becoming an important thing. I sold on these conferences, which would probably have in a range of 300 to 500 people attending, and they'd be 2-day conferences around London. I worked on some ones which were based in New York, Singapore, Malaysia. Where else have I done? Maybe a few in Europe. It's a while ago now. So they opened my eyes up to sort of the global market of renewables, and my connections and my LinkedIn profile grew and grew and grew through meeting all these different people, calling them, discussing, how they could get the best out of an event based on the topic of what the event was providing, I guess. Then I started doing they owned an exhibition, and that exhibition was relatively big for the time. This is around 2015. It was doing really well, but unfortunately in the UK we had a subsidy drop. So the subsidies were taken away by the government, which is just a normal thing. It happens in every economy. Any growing industry or emerging industry has some form of support. That was taken away, and it had to survive by itself. A lot of people who were doing business in the UK left the UK and went to find other industries, or economies rather, to go and facilitate their business there, where it might be easier to enter, sort of thing. So that event shrunk quite a lot, and it was quite hard to maintain those clients who didn't really have any more market share or didn't want to do business in the UK anymore. So it took me a good few years, maybe 2 or 3, to build it back up to getting it into a momentum. And it went from a scale of maybe 4,000 meters squared to being up to 45,000 square meters, nearly 50 last year, at the NEC in Birmingham. That's the National Exhibition Centre.
Oh, wow, interesting. And what I can imagine you learn a lot through the industry just from being privy to listening to conversations that are happening at the event. Like many routes into renewables, you could say it's not traditional, but it probably gave a good base. Typically, what role do these events play in kind of the deal flow and momentum across the sector?
Oh, huge amount. One of the best things that I ever hear or heard from post event was a client calling or speaking to a client maybe at another event or a networking session or something like that, where you say, "How was the event for you then? What, did you get anything out of it?" And somebody say, "Yeah, we got a £10 million order or a $10 million order," and you'd be like, "That is the perfect outcome. So your return on investment is tenfold, way, way, way above what you spent on that event." And 2-3 days out of the office with the team, it costs a lot to put on an event. It costs a lot to go to an event. You've got to think about flights, accommodation, food, all these other aspects. You don't think about that if you're attending it, but if you're actually exhibiting, you've got the build of the stand. You've got to do all these ins and outs of what the exhibition centre wants you to do, whether it's electricity, water, health and safety. There's so many different requirements. So hearing people talk about the return on investment that they got, best thing ever, because it means, one thing, they'll return, but 2, it builds a trust in you because you got them there. You facilitated that platform for them to sort of showcase their products, their solutions to the greater sort of economy or industry within the UK. And then you see them growing and growing and growing. I've had companies who were sort of taking a tiny little stand, maybe 9 meters squared, so it's not big at all, 3x3, at the back of the hall. And then 2 years later, they're getting closer and closer to the big feature areas with bigger stands, because they're using their return on investment for future building of what they're doing. So very satisfactory to see that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, you almost want to use the 10 million one as a case study. I think a lot of people that will listen to this podcast will attend events. I mean, I've hosted kind of community functions at events and networking function at events, and we have candidates quite often in our recruitment flow that ask for support around networking at events. How can a company or an individual attendee make the most out of such events?
So obviously get everything booked. Your trains, your accommodation, make sure that's out of the way so you can focus on what you're meant to be there for. Best thing is, and I do it now that I'm not in events, I'm in the industry side now. I look at the event a good few months out. I look at the agenda, the speakers, the sponsors, the exhibitors, attendee lists if they're there, but they're rarely there. I try to sort of engage and connect and engage with those people if they're suitable for my sort of doings within my business. Spark up conversations so that when you get there, you see them, you can say, "Oh, hi Tom, we spoke. We sent a few messages. We were discussing this and this. I'd love to catch up with you and do a bit more of that." Making sure you plan your day out is a good one. Some exhibitions can be massive. We went to Solar earlier this year. That is, I think it was 16 halls, something like that, 12 to 16, and over 100,000 attendees. There's no way you can get around that exhibition without having a plan or some form of strategic route through different exhibition halls to make sure you see the right people. So planning your day, making sure you've got sort of a list of who you want to see, who you want to talk to. That's definitely a way forward for it.
Yeah, Intersolar's it was my fourth time this year at Intersolar in Munich, and I think the fourth time. It normally the first day I'm normally always overwhelmed, even though I know exactly what I'm expecting. But I think this is the first time that I had like a proper grasp of where I should be and what routes I wanted to take, and yeah, it makes a hell of a difference.
Yeah, it was really hot as well.
And it was
Really
warm
hot.
again, yeah, indeed.
Next year it's in June, so it's going to be even hotter.
Yeah, it's normally in June. This year was for some reason a little bit earlier.
Yeah, tends to fluctuate between May and June.
Okay,
I
interesting.
remember going in after COVID. I think it was in November, might be September, but I think I'm going to say November, and it was freezing.
Yeah.
Absolutely freezing. Complete contrast to the normal Intersolar you go to.
You've obviously, after Solar Media, you went to work for Terrapin, I think, which is similarly focused on exhibitions. And there you operated a sales team underneath you. Is that right?
Yeah, so the exhibition I was referring to, the one that's at the NEC in Birmingham, that was acquired by Terrapin from Solar Media, and I managed to negotiate myself before even knowing about the acquisition to run and manage that show. So I essentially was part of the deal. So I went across, new company, it was just myself and a producer. So it was myself selling, because at that time the event was at a much smaller scale.
Yeah.
Myself and the producer put it all together, working with marketing and operations and the senior team. And yeah, it started off with just two of us. And as it grew over the years, we started hiring people here and there. And I think at one point I had maybe 10 to 12 staff underneath me doing different aspects of the business, whether it be selling profiles or selling certain areas or features of the event, doing startups, doing the agenda side of things, content. So yeah, that was great fun. It was nice to hire people who I got on with and who I liked, and I didn't necessarily focus on their CV, on their exactly where they went to school or the grades they got, etc. I focused on their interview and their personability with me, and I thought if they can get on with me and understand what I'm telling them about the event before they even start working on it, then they're going to do a good job.
Yeah.
And that tended to be the case all the way through, really. I don't think I had one employee who didn't quite meet a great fit with the team, but also have such a lovely outgoing personality where everyone involved in the exhibition, all the participants, whether it be sponsors, exhibitors, speakers, etc., didn't get on with them. And the amount of compliments I had for that team that I managed was brilliant. And I still get it now, even through clients that I see now. They're like, "Oh, I caught up with blah, blah, blah the other day, and they're doing this now."
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's one of the hardest skills, I think, in kind of...
Well, you're very experienced in the hiring process, so yeah.
Yeah, in growing a business, one of the hardest skills is keeping that, for want of a better word, culture and things as you grow. So yeah,
Yeah,
that.
important.
Yeah. So now going across to you obviously went from the event side of thing. I think we've spoken offline previously. You might have had some thoughts of maybe could you do that part of the business on your own or go on your own, but you've actually now gone into your current role at Solarport. How did that come about?
So the exhibition got to a certain place. Business has changed. The business didn't seem like the best place for me to stay. So we decided to leave it at that. I had a little break because I had a little boy last year, and my wife was still on the end of her maternity. So we went off on a nice holiday, had a few months break, had a nice Christmas, and then when it came to about mid-Jan, when people were getting back in the office, I decided, right, it's time to find the next step. And in doing so, I'd spoken to a few of my old clients saying that, things are changing and I believe I'll be moving on. And lovely as they are, they all sort of supported that and wanted to keep in touch. And some of them even offered me a few roles here and there straight away. But I wanted my little break. I thought it was well deserved. So I took my break, and then I had a call with one of the heads of Solarport, a good friend of mine, who we have a lot in common as well because he has a little son of the same age. So we've been speaking a lot about that over the years. Had the chat, went through what they were trying to do, which was expand into Europe. I'd made all these connections through trying to expand that exhibition, and I forgot to mention that exhibition turned into expanding into multiple other locations through Europe, trying to move its success, basically copy paste it into different markets, which were emerging or needed a renewables exhibition to help that economy. So with that sort of connection base and reach that I seem to have, which I've built over a long time now, it seemed like the right fit. And it's a business that's growing. It's a business full of lovely people who know what they're doing. They're intelligent. They get on with it. They're lovely. They have fun. And their expansion views are fantastic. We've got a product which is a premium product in the market, but a product that's reliable and durable and something that EPCs, developers and asset owners like as a solution to their projects that they're trying to build.
You mentioned it a little bit in your introduction, but just tell us a little bit more about what Solarport does exactly, maybe about said product and what your role is in helping them grow.
So Solarport is a manufacturer of ground mount solar systems. There's also a few other products that are coming down the line. So watch this space. They deployed just under a gig over the last year in the UK. They've been looking at expansion into Europe. They've got a few projects here and there dotted around Europe. And they're looking to expand quite rapidly on the success that they've had in the UK. And it's not just pulling something off the shelf and selling it to somebody who wants to put solar in the ground. It's not that at all. It's engineered, it's designed, it's got a care behind it, it's got a service behind it. Everything is to facilitate what the client needs, what will help maintain solar over years and years and years. Because if you have a project, for example, and an asset owner wants to deploy it, but they're going to flip it in 2 years. They're not really caring enough about the technology that's been implemented. But somebody who's going to take the project and reap the benefits and the revenues from it in the years to come wants a durable and reliable solution. So, like I said, I've got a good connection base across Europe. I also grew up in Spain, so I speak the language there. So that's an aid on my behalf. I've traveled around Europe a lot. I've met a lot of people. I understand the cultures and sort of the way the languages work. So hopefully that will aid my help in expanding the business. Solarport is looking to do it. Like I said, their best case sort of scenarios is implementing what they've done in the UK and Europe.
Yeah.
European market is hard though. There's so many manufacturers out there which are competitors of ours, who have been in those markets for years and have really good relationships with their suppliers and their clients, etc. There's also different areas of Europe which are very much mature markets versus emerging markets. There's also a technology trend. So Solarport provide a fixed tilt system currently. So that's just stuck in the ground at one specific degree angle. And that's what's get delivered. If you look in Southern Europe, it's very much a tracker market where the solar panels will follow the sun during the day based on algorithms put through the system. So with a fixed tilt product, going into those markets is very difficult, but we are developing a tracker. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to. That'll help open up a lot of more business cases for Southern Europe. If we look at sort of Central Europe, the ground is a bit harder. The weather's not as great and as sunny as Southern Europe, say like Spain, Greece, Portugal, Italy, etc. So that's more of a fixed tilt market. It does have elements of tracker, but not so much. Eastern Europe is very emerging at the moment. Those are all markets that have quite a lot of capacity for target by 2030 versus quite a small capacity that's already installed. So there's a lot of movement there and a lot of effort to get that sort of independency on their energy use. So a lot of those countries in sort of eastern going up to northeastern Europe rely a lot on Russian gas or still on coal, for example, and they're really trying to become independent and more efficient in the way they do things. And these capacity levels show that they want to deploy more than they would actually need so that they can have interconnections with neighboring countries and also supply rather than just offtake what they've built. So it's a really interesting area.
Yeah, you've answered my next question actually in terms of European markets, because you've given us a really good explanation on different markets and different climates and things like that. But the Baltics and Eastern Europe is something I'm hearing more and more and more right now. Yeah, I think in the next couple of years you're going to see real expansion in those areas.
Oh.
From a mounting perspective, what do project developers, leaders, directors underestimate the most?
I think the longevity of how long a project can be around.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you put steel in the ground in a corrosive sort of area, it's going to fall over within a few years if you haven't treated that steel correctly or you haven't designed and engineered it specifically to that site. I think there's a lot of sort of capex and cost sort of side of things where people want to deploy renewable assets as cheaply as possible.
Yeah.
But you can do that. You can buy off-the-shelf stuff really easily and deploy it for a lot cheaper than you can for most of, for us and our competitors. But is that worth it? Is that a quality product that's going to last years and make sure that you reduce your costs on O&M in the future? So I think the balance of wanting to deploy really quickly, but making sure you take the time to understand what the project actually needs to generate enough electricity and revenue moving forward over the years, because a project could last 20, 40 years. Like we have a 25-year warranty, we go up to 40 years based on the product and the selection of steel and coatings that we use. So that's an important factor. I think that's something of an oversight maybe to EPCs and developers that just want to get it out quickly, roll it out, etc. But it'll come back to bite them. If you look at solar panels, for example, our steel will stay in the ground for up to 40 years, maybe even longer. But solar panels will need to be interchanged because the technology advances so quickly. Steel will stay the same. Might become more greener. It's not green industry steel, but it's something that has to go in to help the renewable assets get built, right? So panels will need revamping. But if you think about your mounting structure and you're clever about it, you won't have to, one big payment at the beginning. You won't have to have incurred costs down the line.
Maintenance, etc. You might have answered this question actually in the good explanation you've just given, but then so what are the best developers doing? What are the forward-thinking EPCs developers doing right now?
Taking time, doing tests, understanding their soil, understanding their site, the elevations, what foundations can be used. So a mounting system generally tends to be just steel piles piled into the ground. There are many different other foundation options. So we have Galbian baskets, we have anchors, we have concrete ballasts, etc. These are all available on the site if you do want to have a look at them. It's actually a post I did the other day about the different foundation types and how people need to consider those different foundations for different projects.
You mentioned a little bit about your post there. And I like what you do on LinkedIn. I follow your work a little bit. How big a part does posting on LinkedIn play in your business development strategy and how you build relationships?
Good question. This role for Solarport didn't exist before. So putting out that awareness, making sure people know of our brand, of what we do, the quality, the service provided, the references we have for the UK that we're trying to implement into Europe, that's important. It's not so much about selling it. It's more about becoming an expert in the area and understanding those needs for those clients and making sure they get educated on it as well, rather than just thinking, right, we need to buy that and put it in the ground. They've got to think about these things. So putting stuff out on LinkedIn or social media in general is quite important. One thing is an educational piece, but two, it's also a lead generation piece. I find my LinkedIn profile has gone up, tenfold in the last couple of months since I've been at Solarport. Introducing myself to new players in different markets in different countries, new businesses I'd never heard of. I had to do this huge, big research project when I first started. It was almost like a dissertation. It's 12,500 words on researching all these different markets, but using LinkedIn and other sources through the internet to try and find the people I need to engage with, the people I need to talk with. So posting stuff is really important. It helps build a following, helps build a lead generation piece, and shows that we know what we're talking about rather than just trying to flog something, you know?
Yeah, I completely agree. It took me a while to get on board with it as well. Think I'm a little bit old-fashioned in that sense, and almost felt uncomfortable sharing things on LinkedIn. But I would say the same as you. Yeah, the activity that it drives through your profile, the leads that it drives through your profile is yeah, it's probably the quickest and easiest way to.
Yeah, and the more you do it, the more you realize the way you say things or the way you put things makes a difference into the amount of impressions or the amount of feedback you get on it. So it's important to, persevere with it,
Yeah.
even if it seems like it's not really doing anything. Persevering with it will slowly build up this momentum, and that momentum will help drive business and help drive the company into this expansion into Europe.
Yeah, agreed. Just looking ahead a little bit to the future, and you can answer this on the wider solar industry or in particular around products like yours. But where do you see the industry heading in the next 3 to 5 years? And what excites you the most?
What excites me the most is the amount of target capacity that's out there. If you look at Solar Power Europe and the reports that they've just come out with, and even market outlooks that they've come out with over the last sort of 6 to 12 months, they're really important to read. They're really interesting. They have great insight into individual countries, markets as a collective, understanding, different rules, regulations, policies, frameworks. Will governments change? Will they become pro renewables, or are they going a bit backwards, etc.? That excites me the most. The sort of the trends that are coming in now, the technology advancements, how people are becoming more and more aware of renewable assets and how they can be deployed and benefit sort of the local economy, the greater economy, a country as a whole, whether you're importing or exporting energy. But yeah, I'd say most of all the target capacity. Some countries have a humongous amount. The UK's got a massive amount. You look at Germany, wow, they're going to try and double it in the next couple of years. Turkey, massive market, big industrial area though. So, renewables versus sort of fossil fuel-y sort of type of industries, they need it to help balance it out, if not slowly deplete the fossil side of things. So, yeah, the change in how we perceive energy, how we're using it, how we can deploy it, how it can be economically beneficial for the greater good and everyone that's involved in it and surrounding it. I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
One point to make as well, the UK has the highest energy cost in the whole of Europe,
Really?
which is incredible. Yeah, by a long way. I saw a chart the other day and the UK was at the bottom, and I can't remember who was at the beginning, maybe Germany, but at the bottom was the UK, and the bar chart just went almost to the end, whereas everyone else was at least half, if not lower than half, compared to us. So deploying renewable assets in the UK is important. I'm sure you've seen your bills go up.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I completely agree. But I think great answer. And for me, looking at it with a slightly different lens than you possibly, but exactly that. The quotas that have been promised and the quotas that countries have got to deliver on is what keeps the energy in the industry, and it's only gonna go one way.
Yeah.
If you were starting again and building a network from scratch in renewables, in solar today, what would you do differently?
I don't know, to be honest. That's quite a good question, Tom, because like you said earlier, my role in it has I kind of just fell into it, and it kind of just happened.
For what it's
I
worth,
guess.
I think it might be nothing, because I think that the way that you fell into the industry, that the expertise that you've clearly got, and the industry and the network that you've clearly got is awesome. Yeah. So
I would say maybe something educational.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Hence, I went off to Canada skiing and snowboarding and bumming around for a few years. And that was post university. Maybe if I had a better sort of understanding of how the world worked back then, or what might be something that interests me the most, then maybe more of an educational piece, studying sort of the ins and outs of engineering, or the ins and outs of how the energy industry as a whole runs, putting something more focused. Because at university, I did business and Hispanic studies. So I followed my Spanish level, and I thought business, as a general thing, maybe that's important. Of course it is, but it wasn't very specialized, a very generic sort of degree. So I'd say something that taught me a bit more of a fundamental base
yeah,
may have helped me get further quicker, if you know what I mean.
yeah. Makes sense. I imagine. Would that have helped more than the Spanish, though? I don't know. I imagine the Spanish really helps now. It's good to have.
I don't know. It's nice to have another language,
Yeah.
especially when someone's speaking near you and they don't know that you speak it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, last question, and we'll put all relevant links and things below, but where can people follow and connect with your work, Solarport's work?
Yeah, well, first one, follow the Solarport page on LinkedIn. Lots of posting, lots of insights, lots of broadcasts about what we're doing and what's coming up, projects that we have referenced, etc. The Solarport website itself has everything that's detailed to understand what we do, what our product is, and how we can provide a service-based solution. And then if you want to follow me for any further insight, connect with me, follow my page, comment and like my posts to sort of engage with me, and hopefully we can discuss it further if there's something we have in common or something we need to talk about, whether it's events, renewable energy, or something else.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tom. Thanks for coming on. That was really insightful discussion. And yeah, thanks for joining.
Thank you very much, Tom. Very appreciate it.